I think to start something like that alone takes a lot of courage because it's number one, it's kind of that classic scenario of am I the only black person who feels this or ethnic minority who feels this?
Mm.
And it's like being intentional about finding other people who do relate with that. And how easy the good thing about Ravensbourne is, it's quite a diverse uni, there's
Mm.
quite a big mix of cultures and backgrounds. So was it relatively easy for you to find someone else? What was
Well,
this an idea that you had, or someone else had the
so
idea and you kind of
this was Kemi's baby. Kemi is the creative director of Enough Said.
okay?
Initially it started as let's do an event for Black History Month.
Mm,
And Kemi was involved with that. And then basically I not that's the really weird thing about like we're gonna be an agency really soon. We are working with clients and
wow.
we're only about 2.5 years old. It's still really hard for me to like be like, this is definitively how we started, you know?
Mm,
Um but I know at some point it went from Kemi is maybe thinking about doing an event to Kemi and friends, including me,
hmm.
want to do something more than just an event for
Yeah.
Black History Month, and it's gone from that to the Nuff Said crew are trying to change the creative industry.
Wow. And so, I mean, I want to hear more on how, like, because there's one thing to have an idea and to have a group of people, but then to make it official, to
Mm,
actually get your name out there, building the website, contacting people, contacting the uni saying, oh, we're trying to do this, getting people on board to, yeah, and then building a following online.
mm.
Like, if there's anything I've learned from this year in terms of my, podcasting and creative endeavors, it's not always easy to get people to support or value
No,
what you
definitely.
give.
Yeah,
So
absolutely.
how, like, take us through the nitty gritty of just getting the whole thing set up. Like,
um,
did you always have a clear idea of what Enough Said
no,
was about,
but
or
here's the
yeah,
thing. I think you've mentioned like tons of things that have happened with
yes,
Nuff Said, and
mm.
I just wanted to say real quick, it didn't all happen day one. Like
Oh yeah, of course, yeah,
we've been around for 2.5 years at this point.
yeah,
Um, and like maybe a bit less than 2.5, maybe almost 2 years. And we didn't set up the website day one.
oh
We
yeah, of course,
focused
yeah,
on we focused on the stuff that we could do, like from the beginning. So first it was let's create an event, and then it was let's get people on board for this event. Let's talk to Derek. Let's talk to Ravensbourne. Let's see if we can get financing for the event. Okay, where are we
mm,
going to hold it? One of the people on the Ravensbourne's advisory committee says they have
mm,
space at the mill. That's great. Okay, which speakers do we want? Derek,
mm,
can you pay for the speakers? How much is this going to cost? What about this? How about like
mm,
you set a goal in mind and then you cut up the things that you definitely need for that goal to be achieved, and bit by bit you do them and you do them and you do them and you do them consistently, and at some point you've held an event, and then you do it again, and then you do it a third time, and then you realize we don't want to be an events company. We want to create initiatives. We want to make adverts. We want to create campaigns. Okay,
mm.
who do we need to talk to do that? Who do we need to be in conversation with? Um, and then it's okay. Well, I don't just want to create campaigns. I want to invite creatives to talk to Enough Said, and I want to learn about diversity. Okay, how are we going? Let's make a podcast. How are we going to do it? Who needs to be involved? How long is it going to be?
Mm.
Um, you do it. You do it. You do it bit by bit by bit, and eventually you have 12 episodes of a podcast. You have
Mm.
3 events. You have projects that you're working on with clients, and then you
Mm.
keep going.
Wow. Do you want to just take us through kind of getting your first client? What was that like? Do you remember the moment? Do you remember? Well,
Oh,
at what point
it's
was this?
so. Here's the thing. I think I always say this to my parents. I think success is a mixture of preparedness and opportunities, right? You can
Yeah.
handle the preparedness, you can't handle the opportunity.
Mm.
I
You have
can
to be
I could
ready for
be
when it comes.
exactly. I could be the most talented designer in the world. If no one ever
Mm.
tries to hire me, or I don't put myself in spaces to be hireable, then I'm not going to get hired.
Yeah.
Um, and there's for me personally, I can't speak for anyone else. There's been like a genuine God-given grace in association with opportunities. I've never had to fight people to be put in the right space
Oh,
to have my voice heard or for an opportunity to come my way. I've just had to do my best to be prepared. I've just had to have as good a portfolio as I can, um, my craft on tap, to understand my industry, to understand what I do, to understand what makes me as an individual creative valuable.
mm,
Um, and then I've had opportunities to talk to people, and when I've talked to those people, I've done mm, not done my best to sell myself, but I've presented who I am
yeah.
in conversation. And when those two things mesh properly, they've turned into really cool opportunities for Nuff said, or really cool opportunities for me. Um, what's the verse like? Don't despise the day of little
The small,
beginnings.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
something like
like
that.
there are like I'm. I think there are people in your circle right now that you could bring value to with what you have, with the character and the talents you have right now, that could
Mm,
seriously open up doors for you. But not all of us have the perspective to be able to do that. And I'm not even saying it like I have the lock on the perspective of what opportunity is going to pop off and what isn't.
yeah.
I just know that when things have come my way that I think, oh, this is cool, this is interesting, I've done my
Mm,
best to do well at them. And those have, by God's grace again, turned into further really cool opportunities.
mm. One sec. So yeah, so who was your first client?
So we are working with, am I allowed to say? We're working with a couple of people.
Okay, fair.
We are, we're in a, there's one branding agency that we're in an extended project with, and
Okay,
another new business opportunity that's going to be launching soon.
okay.
Yeah, we've got a lot. We haven't signed NDAs, but some
Mm,
of the stuff that we're working on hasn't been launched yet. So I'm
yeah,
like, but there's stuff happening.
yeah. So how are you helping these brands? What practical things are you doing? Are you helping them with their advertising, or like what and what sort of brands are they, if you can give that away?
So there is one which is in the business sector,
Okay.
specifically like financing businesses.
Yeah.
Um, there is a branding studio. There is a really interesting content platform that we're working with as well.
Mm,
Um, so like what we do kind of takes different shapes. Sometimes it's just about advertising the business.
mm,
Sometimes it's about branding the business, and sometimes it's about trying to help the business think about their diversity and how do we create initiatives or
mm.
processes that can assist in their own internal processes to improve their diversity.
Wow. So how the team, I guess, how big is the team now? Because I imagine it would be highly beneficial to have people from a range of different practices.
Mm,
Um, who, you've got your, I guess, your treasurer and someone. You said
um,
or like you're into copywriting as well, and
yeah.
so like, what's the range of skills within the team, and about how big is the team now?
Seven of us, including me.
Okay.
A range of skills all across the creative board. We have an account manager, producers, like
Mm,
visual creatives. Yeah, it's like a standard makeup for an early like agency team kind of. Yeah.
yeah. Oh, cool. And have you been obviously maybe you can't give away too much details on this, but like, have you been able to get some financial gain from this? Like, you know, and
Yeah, we're being everything we do. Like, okay, rule number one.
mm-hmm,
And I realized this rule really early. I always want to be careful, like, not to when I'm talking about stuff,
yeah,
definitively not to be like, and I am the author of this rule, and I know, like, I only know it because someone who's smarter told me.
mm,
Um, but like, make your projects pay from day one.
yeah,
Um, so we don't work with stuff unless we can see what the appropriate value exchange is.
yeah,
And me personally, I'm always really, really careful about what how is this useful? Like what is the value exchange? How am I gonna, if I'm not getting paid from this, then what
yeah,
am I getting in return for this, you know?
mm, yeah. And I guess, what sort of initiatives did you as a team look at to help you do to grow in the services that you're giving? Because especially, it's one thing to learn a degree
Mm.
on your chosen subject. It's another thing to apply that to, okay, as an as a black person, or as, I don't really like using the term ethnic minority, but I'll just use it
We can, yeah, we can.
for lack of
Just
a
whenever
better
you
word.
use it, like, you just make like air quotes, like
Yeah, air
ethnic
quotes.
minority,
Yeah,
or say it like you're really annoyed.
yeah,
Ethnic minority.
yeah. Or how about non-white? Shall we stick with non-white?
We can say
Because that's
non-white,
what we mean, that isn't it?
or we could just say black people. As a black
Like,
man,
yeah,
as a
yeah.
young black creative.
Fair enough. Fair enough. Um, yeah. So, but where did you learn to have an entrepreneurial mindset as a black person? Like, as a team, where did you get that from, in a sense?
Um, well, Kemi's sick. First of all, our CD.
Mm.
Kemi already has her own business. I
Oh,
think
okay.
Kemi is all about that already. Um,
Mm.
I don't. I think personally, I think that the value you put in the world should always pay you back.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas labor is worthy of their wages. I think if you are doing things, you're putting stuff into the world that is genuinely valuable, then you
Mm.
should be supported so that the value put into the world can be sustainable. Um,
Yeah.
and so for me, and my passion is making stuff. I'm excited by the prospect of making stuff that I want to see in the world, surrounded by my friends, and I want that to be sustainable. So obviously, I want to find ways to be able to make that pay for me. Um, I don't know if I'd call myself. I think entrepreneurial in that over time I've realized that I have an innate desire to solve problems for people in whatever way is best to do that.
Mm.
Um, and that I like genuinely really really love, yeah, problem solving.
Mm.
Um, in whatever space, and sometimes that'll be a product, sometimes that's a campaign, sometimes that's an initiative, but solving problems.
Mm. Cool. And especially in your field, as someone working in advertising and copywriting, obviously you don't have to give a huge lesson on what that is or what that entails, but maybe just a brief insight into what you do, what that practically looks like,
Mm.
um, and I guess your perspective of ethnic representation in the industry that you're starting to specialize in, I guess.
Yeah, sure. So a copywriter is a brand writer. So you write for brands. Sometimes that means you are, sorry, sometimes that means you're writing an advert for brands. Sometimes that means that you're writing some tone of voice stuff for brands.
Mm.
But you're a brand writer, and sometimes even you're a content writer for brands. I see myself not just as a writer, but as a creative, like, communicator. Um, what excites me in my role is listening to people, understanding them, understanding specifically what consumers care about, and then finding
Mm.
out how brands can deliver on what consumers care about in a way that breeds loyalty and like mutual satisfaction. Um,
Mm.
so that's my role is predominantly understanding audiences, figuring out what they want, figuring out how brands can deliver what audiences want in different mediums.
Mm. And have you looked into different kind of black owned businesses and how they run, and
Mm.
observed the way they do their copywriting and things like that? Is that something that you've looked into a little
No,
bit, or?
not really. I guess
Mm.
if we're talking about the space specifically, the industry space is not predominantly black. It's predominantly white.
Yeah.
Um, most of the I did my dissertation on brand tone of voices.
Mm.
And I realized that tons of the books I was reading were just by really great, super talented
Yeah.
white copywriters.
Mm.
Um, and it was frustrating because I was like, Where are the people that look like me or have my experience, or even like whether the South people doing this in the
Mm,
same space. Um,
yeah.
and no, so no, there isn't a ton of people who look like me doing what I do specifically in the industry. But I think you
Mm,
find a lot more as freelancers, or you find a lot more who set up
yeah.
their own
Yeah.
businesses, do their own thing. Um, yeah, and doing again, all those people doing great work.
Mm, okay, that's great. And now let's just get into creative industries in general. And from your observation, maybe from your own personal experience or from the different people that you've known in Ravensbourne, in terms of looking at creative industries in general and how, especially for Black people, there's almost a therapeutic effect on it, that we get to express ourselves through the arts in a way
Mm,
that, not to say that campaigning and politics or whatnot is ineffective, but there's something about the arts that helps people to connect with the humanity in us in a sense. So I
mm,
guess let's just talk about that. Like from your perspective, what sort of things have you been seeing in any creative industry where you're thinking, okay, this is good. We need, I guess, more of this from Black creatives in terms of, um, really empowering Black people, or if you want to be more specific, Black British people.
mm. That's an interesting question. I guess.
Yeah.
I mean, the almost immediate answer to that is in music, because if you look at the
Mm,
history of music in America and also in the UK, um, you see a very, very firm black imprint. Um,
true. Yeah.
and the growth and development of music is almost part and parcel with black culture. So it's really hard to differentiate those two things.
It
So I
is. Yeah.
think that there's been like so black people, I think, a lot more are allowed to take up space in that industry, and
Mm,
it's not odd. It's not odd to see a bunch of black rappers or black R&B musicians or
yeah.
black blues or jazz players. That's not weird.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah. We're living in an age where we're seeing people like Dave collaborating with the BBC Orchestra
yeah,
doing stuff, or
legit.
yeah.
Um,
So it's
so
it's
I
it's
so I think so I think if we're talking about creative spaces where like the black experience gets to flourish, then yeah, music definitely.
mm,
Um, I'm not sure, but then I'm not sure where else we let it take up space specifically.
mm.
Um,
I guess in the
which
acting world as well, there's quite a lot going
yeah,
on.
I think there's hopefully a new British, specifically Black British invasion happening.
Hmm.
John Boyega immediately comes to mind.
Oh yeah.
Um, and yeah, but I feel I think when we talk about my industry specifically,
Mm,
to be positive, I think there's an appetite. There's a definite appetite for difference.
mm,
But what I consistently question is their capacity to deliver on the appetite. You know, um,
right.
you're gonna keep
Yeah.
being hungry if you're not feeding yourself the right food. Um,
Mm,
so like, I get you're hungry, but the most important part is like, what are you doing in response to that hunger?
yeah. Mm. And that's why when I heard about Nuff said, I was like, wow, this is interesting because we don't hear, a lot of lecturers when we start our degrees, they'll go on, oh, the people you meet in university, they might be your best friends for life, blah, blah, blah. But it's like that rarely ever happens. So to actually build something,
Maybe like one or two.
yeah, maybe one or two, yeah. But to actually like build something tangible with
Yeah.
your peers, like pretty much as soon as you graduate, there's some tangible thing that you've got started. I think that's what I'd like to see more. Is like I think networking is a huge thing that
Mm,
we, especially as creative students, we hear a lot about, but do we actually do it? Do we actually know how to network properly? Have we actually got ourselves out there?
mm,
And that leads on well to the different opportunities I've been part of. So I think I've told you about this already, but for those of you who listening who don't know, I've even last year during my second year of my animation degree, there's an institution called the RSA. I don't know if you've heard of the RSA.
hmm
So the Royal Society of Arts. They've been around since probably this 1600s or so. So it's quite an old institution. Lots of
just a bit old.
yeah, yeah. um, some very prestigious people in British history have been part of it, but the Royal Society of Arts is just there to, well, just to empower different initiatives within Britain and even across the world in terms of how to make the world a better place, basically. So if it's projects to do with climate change or empowering young people, the RSA looks at ways to empower those things, and they have all sorts of speakers, kind of like TED, basically, in terms of empowering people through workshops and speeches and stuff. And they do something called the Student Design Awards every year. They have a panel of professional judges for different briefs, and I entered the digital movement image category, submitted my film. There was like a 1 minute clip from an RSA speech that we have to animate to. I got shortlisted, top 7, and then which was amazing because most of the entrants were third year students, so that was great. Got the interview and I got invited to another RSA event where it was talking about power and privilege, and it was an interesting event that I went to because I found another guy there. His name is Julian Thompson. So if Julian's listening to this, I hope he's doing well. He's the founder or co-founder of an organization called Rooted by Design, which is similar to Nuff Said in a sense that it's an initiative to empower just black owned sort of movements in Britain. Just how can we not get past just talking about diversity to actually designing the social construct that we want to see. So being part of that as well, networking with him was great. And I think I had to really get myself out there, and I had to get past the mental barrier of, does my perspective really matter? Because that's one thing, is like a lot of young creatives feel like they love their craft, but in terms of actually breaking new ground and, starting a studio or something like that, it's hard because we sit here and we're like, we don't really see anyone doing what we're trying to do. And we're wondering, is it even worth trying? And through me entering different competitions and stuff, I've surprised myself with what I'm capable of. And I've realized that as little as I think my voice does still matter. And even the workshop that I went to about power and privilege, I contributed my 2 cents on how we can help. It was talking about how we do interviews for jobs, and, we talk about diversity, but when it comes to employing people of various cultural backgrounds, what are we still doing that's not right? How can the RSA run their competitions better so that there's less bias that is applied when they select the shortlisted students for their competitions? And so, I contributed my ideas, and and I'm in a room full of people who are much more qualified than I am. They're all experts in their field. I'm probably the youngest person in the room, but they still felt that I contributed something valuable to that conversation. And the RSA, I'm yet to see the fruits, I guess, of what the RSA allowed us to discuss, but just to feel accepted and that my perspective matters, that's encouraged me to empower other young black people as well, that you don't know how much you can do unless you actually turn up to the room. I'm afraid that is the end of this part of this interview. Stay tuned for the next part of the interview in the next episode. Thanks for listening. Peace.